Okay, so this is the second part of the week 9 lecture on mental health. So this is getting into some of the apps, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the stories for this week. So this is a study that was done on some individuals' mental health diagnoses. There's 34, they all have different diagnoses. This is in upstate New York. And it was around EDT, or everyday technologies that they use, trying to figure out what they use, why they use it, and how open they are to successful change in terms of using new technologies to help them manage the symptoms, medication management, that sort of thing. They found that 97% use a cell phone, 64 of a smartphone, 32 a tablet. Most of them reported that EDTs, again, everyday technologies, are very important to them, and that they're satisfied with their cell phone or tablet. What do they use it for? Texting was the number one thing. Voicemail, email, browsing, voice calling. A little bit on the notes, reminders, not so much. A little bit on the reminders to take meds. That's kind of like a red flag. They really aren't using it to remind themselves to take their medications. And just a little bit to monitor health and fitness. So there really is a disconnect between all the times that they're using it for voicing and texting and how much they're using it for more health-related purposes. Personal factors as to why they discontinued some of the new stuff that was tried with them, the new apps, different kinds of technology, felt like they never needed it or wanted it. They didn't feel like they were really asked or listened to in terms of, do you really want this technology or not? Their opinion was not considered during the device selection process. They weren't listened to, no empathy there. Negative view towards the device, depression, lack of disability acceptance. They don't want to be seen using something to remember their meds, I guess. Technology factors, difficult to use, complex instructions, lack of training, lengthy setup time. These are the kinds of things, like with everybody, that throws you off with tech if it's too difficult. Environmental factors, socially acceptable. Positive factors, increase their function, they found, replaced with better technology, alternative solution, preferred personal assistance. These are some popular apps for mental health clinics, mental health clients. This is a cool one on anxiety. And what it does is you rate your anxiety on the scale. And then let's say you're panicked, it gives you tips and steps. So you can kind of rate yourself, kind of get more awareness of where you're at, anxiety, almost like the zones of regulation, with tips to kind of work your way through it. So you're at a 10, and this is a tip to work your way through a 10, so you get out of that state. Simple, kind of effective thing, very simple. There's a zillion other ones. And the sources at the end, there's some a list of links for AOTA recommended ones around anxiety, mental health. There's just a zillion different ones with that. Just some general guidelines. You kind of know this stuff, but kind of when you're looking at a new app or new behavior, try to link it with their existing routines. Don't add a whole new routine. When you're getting your coffee in the morning, this is the time to look up your app and see around your meds. Make use of an existing device versus introducing a new one. Don't give them a new smartphone. Even the app, make sure it's in sync with the kind of apps that they're used to using. When you're teaching those fundamental things, teach them, show them, have them do it. Kind of have them do the task right in front of you. Can they do it? And critique and kind of repeat it. What's the readiness for change? Teach back is the term I was looking for. They use teach back, so they have to do it so you can see that they can do it, that they've mastered it. Readiness for change level, are they ready for it? Are they not ready for it? Is it at their cognitive level? If you do like an ACL or something, you can see where their cognitive level is. Okay, and then lastly, this is the stories that you had to read and write about a little bit. What were the purpose of them? They kind of reflect some of these themes here, the limitations of medical science, the kinds of things we were doing with mental health clients that we thought were beneficial back then were not necessarily beneficial. You could argue that may be going on right now too, especially with the medications that we talked about. Lost individuality of the mental ill. I mean, they kind of symbolically, metaphorically left their individuality behind in the attic with all their stuff and their suitcase full of clothes and items of significance to them. The lives that were lost through institutionalization. And as you know, these institutes were just prevalent everywhere. They were big in Maine, and they just all shuttered and are all closed. And there are kind of pros and cons to that. Um, finding meaning, finding life meaning through lost objects, finding clues to the lost lives. I thought it was fascinating how they went through these two cases and they found these things that really told the story of these people and these lives that were lost quite tragically, really. Life at the Willard Psychiatric Center. This is the place that closed. This is very typical of a lot of psychiatric centers. Um, Housed 4 times as many women as men. And there's a story behind that. A lot of and people were admitted involuntarily. There used to be that saying that the men in the white coats are going to come and get you, and that really was the case. A lot of husbands admitted their wives involuntarily. They may have just wanted to get rid of them. They may have been too difficult to handle for whatever reason. And they were stuck in this institute, and that was the last they were ever seen. It's quite really horrifying to a degree. Last resort for chronically ill, those not expected to recover. Primarily only custodial care with limited to no medical care. So all these people clustered together, as you would think, with COVID, we're so sensitive to this now, but all these different diseases that are around, the influenzas, the tuberculosis, a lot of them died that way. And they were very much classified by their ability to work. Those who could work were a higher status than those who could not work. Those who could work really worked at jobs to fund the institution in a lot of ways. Work was not seen as therapy, but a means to support the institution. All these unmarked graves that were there, really quite awful. These people lived and died there, and there were a lot of cases they were just forgotten by their families, and they were forgotten even in death. They didn't have any kind of headstone. They were just kind of buried and forgotten. Those who could not work, again, they were looked down upon in this institution, as they were in a lot of institutions, were kept in locked wards, known for being cold, dirty, neglected. There was OT, especially in the early OT, focused on the arts and crafts. They did certain things that were not really effective at all. Electric shock treatments, we've seen that they were beneficial, but the way they used them back then, they were more damaging to the brain than helpful. A lot of tranquilizers. Thorazine, this is a big advent in medications for psychiatric illnesses, for schizophrenia, stopping the voices. Wasn't too effective. So it kind of gives you some perspective, some context where these individuals are coming from with these different stories. If you're listening to this, you probably won't be able to take care. You didn't take part in the discussion, but again, those themes we're looking at: the lost client-centered, empathic-centered care, the lost empathy, the lost story of these people, and how that really impacted their quality of life in the institute and the quality of care that they received. Okay, and then Thursday we're going to do medication compliance. Cool class on toolkit and doing medication compliance in cases.